Hello, good afternoon.
Hi there.
I wanted to introduce my friend Lindsay Schupbach. Lindsay, if you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about you.
thank you. I am in Fayetteville, Arkansas with you, Emily. Um, I am a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm a psychotherapist by trade, do talk therapy. I started off as an adulting in the world of education and real quickly realized that it probably wasn't for me. Kind of toyed around with how do I get out of there and figure out what's for me to do. I made my way to a system called the enneagram, which if we have time we can chat about it a bit, but it's a simple way to put it is it's a personality related inventory, but it was a tool that I discovered that pointed more to what was going on in life with people and what needed to be healed. And I began working with that in lots of different settings. Pretty much everyone I worked with, though, we ran up to some kind of trauma, whether that was a big T trauma or little T trauma. Sent people to therapy over and over again, and they didn't want to go though. They wanted to stay and work with me, and I did kind of realize I got to stay within my lane. So I went back to school at 40, right when perimenopause was knocking at my door, but not screaming crazy loud at me quite yet. It's been screaming at me for the last few years. And I have a private practice in Fayetteville where I treat a number of people with different life circumstances and situations. But one of my favorite areas to work with is perimenopausal and menopausal women who are not seriously mentally ill, but have come upon like everything's not working as well as it did once.
Mhm.
Kind of like that.
Perfect. I love that. And of course, I think everybody that's a part of this built group also is very interested about, perimenopause, the brain, and all of that. So, thinking about mental health and perimenopause, a lot of people feel like all of a sudden they're not themselves and they can't control, what's going on in their head. And can you tell me a little bit about what the brain is actually doing during this transitional phase?
Yeah, like what's actually going on in our brain.
Yeah.
The simple way is there's not enough of, and things aren't working well enough. They're not moving the way they should, the way they previously had. Serotonin, dopamine, GABA, norepinephrine, all of these neurotransmitters, neuromodulators, when our estrogen starts to fluctuate. Estrogen is highly involved in how our brain is using all of these chemicals that we need for our well-being. And as that starts to fluctuate, our brain's not using all that anymore. And so what that really means is our bandwidth changes. And a lot of times what we see, it's not that we necessarily have absolutely new mental health issues. That does happen at times. But what we have been managing throughout life, we just find that maybe we don't manage it as well anymore. We may have women who have no, they know they have trauma. They've been living with it. They are managing, they get by, and all of a sudden they come upon perimenopause and the strategies that get them through just don't work anymore. It may be neurodiversity. It's been kind of underlying there in the surface, looks subclinical maybe, but maybe a woman who's in perimenopause who's diagnosed with ADHD, we see more and more of that. It was there always. If someone truly has it, it was always there. But it could have been that that bandwidth was bigger and you can make it through life and suddenly it's not anymore because your brain is just not using all of these chemicals in the same way.
Do you have any recommendations for what to do in those situations? I mean, I feel like I totally understand what you're saying, where it's like you have so much on your plate. Maybe you had this like organized way of doing everything before, and now it's like you can't, like, I feel like you can't like focus on one thing because you have all of these other things going on. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what type of tips do you have
Yeah,
for?
that's where we go into less, more of less. We have to figure out what do we actually need and get more of that. What is giving us life? What increases our bandwidth? and get more of those things and less of the BS that's not adding to our lives, that's not giving us what we need. I specifically work with 7 areas that we know that research just very clearly shows us, all of us as humans, we need these 7 things for wellness. But then we start looking at kind of evaluating where are they in your own life, in your own system, and what do you need to get more of those. And not to spend a lot of time on them, but what they are is sunlight and darkness. There is some new research that indicate, and I lump those together in one, new research that is more and more showing that the brain needs some time of total darkness in order to function and regenerate in the way that it needs to, but also the importance of sunlight. What we get from the sun, we cannot get through a window. We have to go outside. What we put in our body as far as how we fuel it. I am not a nutritionist. I'm not going to ever talk to anybody about how they eat or what they eat specifically, but we know it matters. How we move our bodies, we've got to move them. More of what actually works for you. This is where you are our expert on how to move our body in the right way. Sleep becomes such an issue at this stage in life. And working on what do we need to improve sleep? How do we get more high quality sleep? Mindfulness. I am a mindfulness based therapist. Mindfulness just means paying attention in a particular way without judgment. And there's lots of practices we can put in there, but mindfulness brings us back to the present moment. It gives us more of where we are and less of the distraction and the striving and the ruminating over things.
Hmm.
Stress management, and every single thing I've just said is about stress management. And I really hate that phrase, stress management, because it's so cliche and it's so ridiculous, but it's essential. We can't, life is stressful, and stress is not in and of itself bad. But looking at a where is the stress that I can handle more of, and what is the stress I need to let go of in my life? And then with the stress that I have, how do I manage it? How do I take care of it not being too much? How do I evaluate my bandwidth? These are the kind of things we do in psychotherapy when we're looking at this kind of stuff. And then the last one is possibly the most important is our relationships. There is heavy, heavy research that shows that the number one factor that impacts well-being over life, happiness, health, longevity is the quality of our relationships. And that doesn't mean that we need to have tons and tons of relationships. That means that we need really high quality ones. So more of high quality positive relationships, less of spreading ourselves so thin throughout time.
Just like thinking about all of these, I'm thinking like, okay, what's like 2 to 3 easy ones that somebody could try to integrate into their life today? Do you have any recommendations? Like, what's the easiest one to do or
Yeah.
most recommended?
Of course. So let's talk about sunlight for a second. Like I said, we really need sun to come through our eyes. That is where we get we don't go stare at the sun and burn our eyes, but that is where we get it. Also, that sets circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is this 24-hour rhythm that every organ in our body lives on. This will impact sleep and our exposure to sun if we are using the sun to set our circadian rhythms. So going outside 3 times a day, just within 30 minutes of waking up. I don't mean you got to go outside for an hour. I'm talking, I don't care how long it is, what you can do. If it's 1 minute, if it's 10 minutes, if it's an hour. Going outside at midday when the sun is at its highest. If you can take your shoes off and put your feet in the earth at that point too, do it. As the sun starts going down, going outside again too, you're getting sun in all of these times and you're setting the circadian rhythms as well, which especially for perimenopausal women, our sleep gets disrupted. This is proven to help with sleep there. Mindfulness. There's tons and tons of mindfulness practices. You can simply start with an anchor to awareness of the present moment. We don't have to do extensive meditation training, although that's extremely life-giving. But just pick an anchor, something that brings you back to the present moment. I work with all my clients on the idea of these three anchors: the breath, body sensation, and sound. They're happening right now. And so if you just pause and let your attention fall on sound, just take it in. Don't evaluate it. Don't judge it. Don't write a story about it. Just listen to sound.
Hmm.
Notice the sound a little further out from us. Notice the sound even further than that. Noticing the sound that's right inside. That just brings us back to right here. And then you let it go and go on with your day and on with your life, you know?
Yeah. Love that. I felt like I was a part of it. I do have a question about the like complete darkness. So, say
Mhm.
like bedroom setup.
Mhm.
Do we need blackout curtains? Do we need no light on in the room? What about like an
Yeah.
alarm clock? I don't know. Just curious.
Yeah. So some pretty decent research that indicates we need total blackness, total darkness, not for a very large amount of time, evidently, during sleep. But we need some. So if there is light coming in that can disrupt that, I would suggest that people avoid, ambient lights, avoid night lights. I mean, it's an interesting thing. We all have them because our kids need them at some
Mhm.
point in time, I have in my bedroom these beautiful, cute little windows that if I covered them, it'd be really ugly and the moonlight can just stream right into it. So it messes with it. So it could be a night, a mask, something. Give
Yeah,
yourself total darkness.
nice. We talk about exercise and it's one of the pillars, and me and you look at exercise differently, but we've talked a little bit about BDNF. And so I'm
Mhm.
just curious about why movement is one of the most important parts of your mental health, and especially during this time of life.
Yeah. Well, and we can talk about it from a lot of different angles, but I'll talk about it from this angle. And I don't tell people how to move. I refer people to people like you. Like even for me, broke my collarbone not too long ago, recognizing the impact of not being able to move in the way I typically do on my mental health. But it's how can I move without further making this worse or injuring myself? And so that's where all of us as professionals have to stay in our lane and know when we refer to someone. So all I can say is looking at what does the research about our brains tell us? And it can be taken from so many angles, but I'm really an enthusiast for brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is BDNF. Serotonin, dopamine, GABA, these are all neuromodulators. BDNF is not a typical neuromodulator in the same way they are, but it acts as one. And it is important for a lot of things related to our wellness, and including the regeneration of brain cells. It's highly involved in this brain restoring itself. BDNF gets highly affected though when this estrogen starts to fluctuate. It's disrupted, is basically what it boils down to. There's some pretty good research that indicates that perimenopausal depression, which has some distinct factors from other depression, primarily when it arises and seems to be associated or linked to the changes in hormones, but also there's some obvious signs that point to BDNF. It impacts how effective our brain circuits are actually functioning. And exercise is one of the factors that is shown to help increase our levels of BDNF in the brain. And so it's signaling the brain, exercise signals to the brain to produce more BDNF. More BDNF is associated with less risk of depression, less actual depression, anxiety, even potentially PTSD symptoms,
Mhm.
all these kind of things. If we go into neurodiversity as well, talking about ADHD specifically, exercise, possibly through this route of BDNF, functions as an emotional regulator. It functions as clearing all the clutter out. People talk about ADHD all the time. It's as if the clinical name for that condition is wrong. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, it's not a deficit, it's an excess. People with ADHD have an excess of attention. Their attention is grabbing everything in. Exercise, just like stimulant medication, helps it to kind of calm that down and the attention to be able to narrow in and focus.
Hmm. Well, and I feel like just not even speaking from a scientific or like a mental health or like a physiology standpoint, just like someone who works out and like doesn't really work out for the physical benefits. I really work out because it like makes my brain feel
Yeah.
better. It's like today I went and I worked out in our garage for the first time in months because it's nice weather, it's warm enough. I felt motivated and I just felt so much better just like getting out there and doing something like, oh, okay, like I can now do the rest of my day and feel a little bit more like clear target and less overstimulated by everything else that I have to do.
Exactly. Exactly. It gives us a boost. Like even one session of moderate exercise, you can probably talk to us more about, for how long, whatever. It's boosting the use of these chemicals in our brain, which boosts our focus, feeling calm, feeling motivated, feeling happy. And then regular over time raises our baseline
Hmm.
to be able to withstand depression, to handle what life pulls at us. So it's like this, it's like when that estrogen starts fluctuating, that bandwidth shifts and gets smaller, we just can't handle what life is throwing at us in the same way. It looks like exercise is one of the things that helps to restabilize that buffer and that bandwidth a little bit.
Just from like the research that you've done, does it say anywhere about the amount of like the duration of time or how many days a week they see
Yeah,
benefits with?
typically what I see, and it depends, of course, there's going to be a huge variation across different research, 3 to 5 days a week, 30 minutes or more. For BDNF specifically, there is a level of intensity that matters. Too low of intensity is very calming, can impact certain neuromodulators. It's very helpful for stretching for whatever, but it might not get you to BDNF producing and enhancing levels. So we need a moderate to moderately high level of exercise. However, we can go too high and we actually kill BDNF in the brain. And
Hmm.
so that means like that really, really intense exercise, which might be good for cardiovascular health, but it's going to kill BDNF. It's like we need a lot and we need a variety. We do know
Yeah.
that. But as far as brain health is concerned, especially if we want to create a new baseline,
Mhm.
we need regular, I'd say 30 minutes to an hour, 3 to 5 days a week of moderate to moderately heavy. And that is, you tell us what you take on that. To me, when I hear somebody say moderate to moderately heavy, I think I can talk to you, but I'm not going to sit down and carry on this kind of conversation. What would you call if somebody says moderate to moderately high intensity?
I think a lot about like heart rate and
Mhm.
where's your heart rate at? So I would say anywhere from 100 to like 150 would be moderate. Whereas like if you're above 150, you're probably at that high stress level, which sometimes we do get there, but hopefully not for an extended amount of time, which with the more exercise that you do, the more likely those numbers are going to come down a little bit. Um, but again, like we don't, I think about cortisol spikes and when people kind of push it too far, and then they have all of this metabolic stuff that happens from like the exercises are too intense. But if I'm looking at like rate of perceived exertion, so like RPE, I'll give a lot of people like an RPE of 6 to 7. So you should have about 4 reps left in the tank when you're doing something like, so we're pushing you pretty moderately but you should
Hmm.
be able to do like 4 more reps once it's done.
Yeah. And strength training is a way to really get there, right?
Yes. I would
Yeah.
say like putting a load on. We need
Yeah.
to load versus just I mean, I love Pilates and I love what it does for people, but it's not quite enough load
Yeah.
for your
And
muscles.
not quite enough to produce BDNF in the same way. And what you're
Right.
talking about really does. And it's here's one thing that we know. Motivation. Like we talk a lot in our world about what really motivates people. The thing that we do know is being able to focus for a lot of people, being able to focus on how I'm going to feel when I'm done is the motivator.
Mm.
And so that motivation, like I never wanted to strength train. I don't want to do that's not fun. I'm motivated by fun and by things that feel good, but there's the motivation. That's how I'm going to feel good. You
Hmm.
know, especially at this point in life, what worked before just doesn't work anymore. We don't have the same bandwidth. We don't have the same capacity.
Right. It is
Really don't.
important to throw in that fun stuff too. Like I know you do your
I
virtual
do,
reality
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I do a virtual reality workout and I love it. It's flowy, it's dancing, it's
Yeah.
moving in a way that is inherently human.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even though I do it in a really odd way through a virtual reality thing that is definitely, I don't think is inherently human. But movement in a dance flowy form it's necessity for humans, honestly. And it's
Yeah,
regulating.
totally. I want to touch on the Enneagram a little
Yeah.
bit and kind of women in the stage of life. How can they use the Enneagram to kind of help them come back to, whatever they need to achieve or overcome? Maybe they have some trauma. But yeah, how would you find the Enneagram useful for women in the stage of life?
Find it extremely useful. The Enneagram, unlike a lot of personality sorting inventories, the Enneagram points to our temperament, what we're born with biologically, and then our environment and what happened and how we responded in typical and patterned ways. The Enneagram explains us, explains everything, explains why we reacted in the way we did. The Enneagram doesn't explain what trauma happened to us, but it explains and points to why and how we were impacted in those particular ways because of that situation. It really points to motivation. The Enneagram points to the subconscious motivation that is driving and that is behind every need we're trying to get met, that we always have been. And when we get to this age in our life, a lot has fallen away. Like we don't always use as many strategies, but sometimes we've solidified some of them because we're just trying to get our needs met. And the Enneagram can point to what is it that we're really trying to get met here? What is it that is missing in our life and that we actually need? I Bessel van der Kolk wrote The Body Keeps the Score, which is the probably unquestionably considered the most widely read book on trauma.
Mm.
And his research says a lot of profound and wonderful things about trauma and the understanding that trauma is actually biological and that we are storing it in our body. And one of the things that he says, though, is that we do have to know ourselves. If we're going to heal from trauma, we have to know ourselves. The Enneagram's not the only tool to know oneself, but it's a great one. And the way I use it in psychotherapy is in a kind of an integrated model. It's never all that I use or what I use, but it speeds things up with my clients on what we need to get to the place of really knowing oneself so we can heal the things that we're still carrying around.
How do you normally do the test with people? Do you do it with them in the office or do you have them like fill something out online?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of people have a misconception that the Enneagram is a test. It's
Mhm.
not. There are many tests of the Enneagram. Some of them are good, some of them are trash.
Mhm.
None of them are definitive.
Hmm.
I do use tests because no matter how often I try to point people away from them, everybody wants to take a test of their Enneagram type. But with the very, very strong caveat that it is just one piece of information that we use in the exploration process. We have to look at patterns and dig into what's the motivation underneath it because we know our Enneagram type by what motivates us in life, not our behaviors.
Hmm.
But these tests are looking at behaviors. And all of us can have a similar or the same behavior, but it's why do we have it?
Hmm.
It's very different what's underlying it. So I use tests to help speed up the process of determining someone's Enneagram type.
Hmm.
And then I do a very selective, a particular interview process where I'm using questions based on type. I'm watching for physical reactions. I'm watching for how people respond as much as what they say. I don't ever tell someone or determine their Enneagram type. I just help point them to it.
Do you feel
Um,
like you can like tell what someone's Enneagram is after you've been sitting with them for 10 minutes, or do you feel like sometimes what you think is not
yes
correct?
and
Or
no.
yeah.
Yes and no. Yeah, I definitely I can tell aspects and I can narrow it down usually when I've met someone for a brief period of time or for a longer period of time, but I'm only ever seeing them through my lens.
Hmm.
And my lens, it's like the Enneagram sorts people into nine different types. And then there are subtypes of that, but that's never where you start when you're learning the Enneagram or your type. Um, but whatever type a person is, no matter how long they've been working with the Enneagram, they're looking at it through their lens. So I have a filter or a lens, and that's how I see people.
Hmm.
It is energies, though. It is energies, and there are certain energies that one can feel and read. And so, I can guess, but what's the best part about working with Enneagram is the discovery period of figuring out your own type. So I do try to lean away from typing people or some occasionally if I know they're way off on their type, I might say, maybe not. Maybe you maybe you want to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I don't typically just I don't just tell people what their type is.
Yeah. I really want to get to this last question,
Mm.
but I'm going to read it because this is so we've talked about this, but it's so out of my scope that I don't really know how to ask it. So I'm going to read what I wrote. So ketamine assisted therapy is something most of our audience has probably only heard about in passing. Who is actually it who is it actually for? And is there a profile of a perimenopausal woman where you'd say this deserves a serious conversation with a provider?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking that question, being open to it. It's the new realm in psychiatry. And we could spend hours talking about it. We could have a whole another show about it. Ketamine is an anesthetic. It's one of the World Health Organization's top 10 medicines because it's useful, it's safe, it's healthy. And I don't know, 70 years ago, it was discovered that very low dose ketamine creates some extremely powerful antidepressant effects. It also creates psychedelic-like effects and experiences. So pure racemic ketamine can be delivered in a multiple variety of means through infusions, through intramuscular injections. It can be compounded into lozenges and into sprays. And in a controlled setting with providers who know how to monitor someone's safety, one can basically have a journey where you have an out of body like experience, a dreamlike state, perhaps. And we don't have a complete understanding of all that's happening in the brain when that happens, but it seems to impact different neurotransmitters than, say, an SSRI, serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are our common everybody is familiar with them, called antidepressants. They're very anti-anxiety as well. But ketamine seems to impact different neurotransmitters, including BDNF. And that may be one of the reasons that it works, is because it creates this capacity to regenerate new brain cells. What we really think it does is it creates the capacity to make new neural pathways, to make new connections. And so our brain, in the most simple way, functions like stimulus happens, neural pathway, we go down, have the same reaction. It's not a decision, it's not a choice. Ketamine basically functions to clear some of that. Highly reduces and relieves anxiety and depression. It can be proven to treat PTSD as well. It's a safe medicine when used correctly. What I do is called CAP, or ketamine assisted psychotherapy. There are lots of providers who will do pure ketamine, but there's a lot of research that indicates when we add this very particular form of psychotherapy with it, which is non-directive, um, it is a profound healing tool. Ketamine has been researched in lots and lots of different settings, and it seems like CAP specifically, not just the use of ketamine, but CAP has potentially a success rate of about 70% for treating treatment-resistant depression. And current psychiatry, SSRIs, other medications, everything you can think of has about a 30% chance
Mm.
of successfully treating treatment-resistant depression. This is an enormous, enormous difference. Within the perimenopausal group, I'd say it is potentially we can be very curious about it because of maybe that link to BDNF. And because maybe we're at a place in life where we're ready to go to what is really deep, where we're ready to go to heal trauma. We develop these strategies throughout life to keep things out of our awareness, to make it through because we need them, because that's how we made it through life as children. That's how we made it through these different stages of life. And those aren't bad things, but sometimes we just get to a point where they don't work anymore. And this is one of those phases of life where that happens. And so we're ready to disrupt these ways of doing things and these systems. And sometimes ketamine assisted psychotherapy and other psychedelic assisted psychotherapies, when done in the right setting, medically reasonable and legal, are really powerful tools and powerful medicine.
I love that. Is there a way that, like, through your experience, or even what's the most common way for people to have ketamine treatment? Is it infusion?
Yeah, yeah, so far. And I don't have a lot. I'm going to speak without the research background. Like I don't have
Mhm.
data right now to point this up, but there are a lot of infusion centers throughout the United States that has become more and more popular.
Mhm.
There are a couple in Northwest Arkansas where we live. Also, and we don't have enough time to go into this, but Johnson and Johnson was able to recognize that this medication is being used. There's a whole industry here they were losing money on, but ketamine is a generic medicine, so they're not going to make any money off of it for a new use. And so they took ketamine has two molecules. They took them and separated them and took the S molecule and created what's called S-ketamine, or Spravato. It is a nasal spray that can be used in clinics.
Mm.
I'm not a fan. It has nowhere near the efficacy
Mm.
and help that pure racemic ketamine does. However, pure racemic ketamine is off-label use. It is very, very expensive. Spravato, in certain situations, can be covered by insurance. So people do use it and just don't see it helps some people for sure. And I don't think it necessarily has huge possibility to harm. I'm not a fan, though, of people purely doing this treatment without the psychotherapy component to it because things get unrooted.
Hmm.
They get brought to the surface. They got to be held. We
Yeah.
can't bring things to the surface and not have the support that's there to handle what comes up.
Hmm.
We can have physical reactions to it. We can have psychological reactions to it. There's all kinds of things. And so just being plugged in and getting the medicine, I'm never a fan of that, and I don't encourage it. And like all of these medicines, they end up on the street. Um, you're not going to get what you want out of buying it illegally and having your own journey with it. It's
Yeah.
just way too risky. Everything is laced with fentanyl, so I can't not say that. But used in the right way, under the right guidance, with the right support, they're phenomenal medicines that really have a place in this phase in life with women as we are realizing that we have to have more of what's working and
Mhm.
less of the BS. It's just
Yeah.
not there anymore.
Well, I love that ketamine is an option. I know that it's probably pretty financially a commitment.
It is.
Um, but hopefully, people can kind of sort out what's most important to them and like what angle of attack they want to take for their mental
Yeah,
health, whether it's through like your seven pillars or just like being more mindful.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no
Well,
one way. There's a
yeah.
lot of ways to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. I have about a minute and a half
Mm.
left. So I wanted to say thank you. But if there's anything else that you want to add to our conversation, please feel free to add it.
I love the conversation. I love the time with you. I love all the conversations that we've had. I think, the one thing I didn't say is that my job, and I'm sure you would identify with this, a lot of times it's just to be able to identify when I need to get someone to somebody else. You
Hmm.
know, like being able to identify, I need to get this person to a physical therapist because they've got to move without hurting themselves. Or,
Yeah,
you know what? We got to get you to an MD, a psychiatrist, or a psych nurse practitioner
mhm.
because medicine is going to help here,
Yeah,
and we can work in conjunction. And when we do, we're better supporting people and
absolutely.
ourselves along the way.
Absolutely. And like looking at it from a pain perspective, it totally comes from your brain, like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
science. So thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you. It was
And I
fun.
will be sending you a copy of this video. And
Marvelous.
thank you so much for joining.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.